On this episode of GWeek, we check out a special event that had GW students dancing for 12 hours straight for a great cause, talk with Professor Debbie Senzipper about her new book, and ask GW students about their reactions to the 2017 commencement speaker. All this and more on GWeek. Welcome to the latest episode of GWeek. I'm your host, Mary Grace Brown. This past month was Celebrate GW Month, and the university held multiple events to mark the occasion. One of these events was the George Washington Birthday Bonfire, which celebrated our namesake's 285th birthday. GWeek reporter Devon Morales joined in on the fun.
It looked like one giant birthday candle for George Washington as the GW community celebrated his 285th birthday.
I think it's a great tradition for GW. It's a way for us to kind of gather. Obviously, the fire brings us together, kind of the warmth of that and the kind of warmth of our community.
I've been out all day working on a paper, and to come out now and get s'mores and friends and fun is awesome.
The university was founded 22 years after George Washington passed away.
But he had left in his will a provision to create a university in the nation's capital. Actually, envisioned it would be right where we are now.
The event opened with a serenade by the Colonial Brass Band and a performance by the GW First Ladies. And then, with a drum roll, President Knapp lit the bonfire.
I know George Washington was a great president, and he really he founded all the American morals that we have today, and so being at this school means a lot.
I think it's a great way for the GW community to come together around something that unites us all, which is our namesake, George Washington.
And Ruffles, President and Mrs. Knapp's dog, made an appearance.
As you can see, she wants all the attention of all the students.
The university held celebrations for George Washington's birthday and the university's founding throughout the month of February. For GWeek, this is Devon Morales.
Thanks, Devon. In addition to the bonfire, GW also celebrated Homecoming 2017, which brought hundreds of alumni to campus to be honored. I had the chance to speak with one of the alumni who made the trip. The weekend surely did not disappoint. GW pulled out all the stops to celebrate Homecoming 2017. The festivities started with the Slam Dunk tailgate to get students and alumni in the colonial spirit before the men's basketball game. The tailgate took place at GW's Health and Wellness Center and featured free food and beverages, as well as a variety of tailgate games, including cornhole, ladder toss, and a basketball shootout.
I'm so excited to be here. There's such a good turnout. All my friends and roommates are around, and there's so many alumni.
Several Division I athletic teams, including the men's soccer team, showed up to showcase their colonial pride.
I'm looking forward to today, probably the basketball game and getting rowdy with all the guys and cheering on GW today.
After the tailgate, fans packed the Smith Center for a 4:30 p.m. tip-off between GW and Atlantic 10 foe St. Bonaventure. The Colonials showed offensive prowess in the first half, knocking down several three-pointers and shooting 48% from the field. It was a real team effort. They led 42-29 after the first half, with Tyler Kavanaugh and Jaron Cena combining for 26 points. A special part of Homecoming 2017 is the recognition of past teams' athletic accomplishments. Teams going as far back as 1957 were recognized, including the GW Football Sun Bowl champions. During halftime, the athletics department honored returning athletes on the court. 21 championship teams in total were recognized. Fans showed their respect for the alumni. In the second half, the Colonials came out red hot again. In the final minutes, the Bonnies rallied back to trail by just 3 points. But GW kept their composure to hold them off and close out the game for a win. Kavanaugh scored a career-high 33 points and was named A10 Co-Player of the Week. GW's impressive performance made fans proud, including one notable basketball alum.
It's so nice to come home. You put in so much time here at the Smith Center and had a lot of good memories. It's fun to see these guys, especially now that I still know a few. It's fun to see them play here and fun to get a win.
GW's victory was a fitting end to a day full of fun activities for the alumni and fans who showed up. For GWeek, this is Mary Grace Brown.
Over to Kogan Plaza. Isaac DC, a nonprofit that partners with the United Nations, held a special event to promote GW multicultural student organizations. Shun Lee was there for GWeek.
On Saturday, many GW multicultural organizations joined Isaac to present the Global Village at Kogan Plaza. Despite the windy weather, many people came to the event with the live performances, free food, and the international embassies. For GWeek, I'm Shun Lee.
Thank you, Shun. GW students had a special opportunity to listen to a Supreme Court justice right here on campus. Ruth Bader Ginsburg visited GW on February 24th, where she spoke to a packed student audience in the university's Lisner Auditorium. She emphasized hope in the long term with respect to the Supreme Court, despite what she called a dark political moment in United States history. Justice Ginsburg discussed immigrants' rights, gender equality, and freedom of speech. She cited the right to speak one's mind and our nation being receptive to all people as core American values. Justice Ginsburg is the second woman to serve on the Supreme Court. She has typically had a liberal interpretation of the Constitution and has been a champion of women's rights during her term on the bench. Justice Ginsburg will be 84 in March, but is quite fit. And during the discussion, she even shared the details of her impressive hour-long daily fitness routine. She told the audience at GW that she is in no hurry to retire. Justice Ginsburg then probably would have been up for the challenge to stay on her feet for 12 hours, which is exactly what GW students did on February 25th. This date marked GW's 4th annual dance marathon, where students danced for a special cause. I was there for GWeek.
For 12 straight hours, GW students stayed on their feet in honor of the kids who can't. February 25th marked the 4th annual dance marathon, the largest student-run philanthropy at George Washington University. Hundreds of students filled the 4th floor of GW's Health and Wellness Center to raise money for the kids at Children's National Health System. The one rule is no sitting. So besides dancing, students could participate in fun activities such as giant Jenga, cornhole, and Foursquare.
Today's my birthday. I could be doing like anything I want today, but I chose to be here because Dance Marathon is that important to me.
The Dance Marathon is the only national children's charity in which 100% of the funds raised support local kids.
I just know it's a really good cause, and if I can do something out of my way to help somebody that can't even get out of bed sometimes, it just feels like it's something that I should definitely do if I can do it.
Last year, the GW Dance Marathon raised $120,000. This year, they have a more ambitious goal of $150,000. And many dancers today have said they're confident they can pull it off.
The goal symbolizes $10 for every child treated at Children's National last year. Patients came to share their stories, such as Jessica Gregory, who was born with spina bifida. She's been through 11 surgeries. Doctors told her she wouldn't be able to walk, but she has beaten the odds.
I'm standing here, 18 years old, a senior in high school, and I'm doing what I was told that I wouldn't be able to do. And I always tell everybody that my motto is, it's a story to be told and I want to tell it.
Getting to meet kids like Jessica was the primary motivation for one dancer.
But just to see the looks on their faces, to have this whole event especially catered towards them, they feel so important. They get to experience that aspect of their childhood that they wouldn't have gotten to experience without the money, without the help, without these marathons around the country.
This year's theme, We Are More, reflects that GW students view Dance Marathon as more than just a philanthropy, and that kids like Jessica are more than just their patient stories. Though the students did not meet their goal this year, they raised an impressive $144,072, a 20% increase from last year's amount. For GWeek, this is Mary Grace Brown.
After the break, we will talk to GW students about their reactions to the announcement of the 2017 commencement speaker. Stay with us.
Raise high. This isn't just our battle cry. It's our call, our challenge. Because when you are called to Washington, you are called to higher expectations, to a higher standard. We are called here to advance knowledge, to serve society, to change the world. This is the George Washington University, and what we make is history. So stand up, be bold, take risks, press on, push harder, raise high.
Welcome back. GW announced Tammy Duckworth, the junior senator from Illinois, as the 2017 commencement speaker. The newly elected senator is a combat veteran, Purple Heart recipient, and a GW alumna. Duckworth received her master's in international affairs from GW in 1992. We sent reporter Samantha Tryman to ask GW students about their thoughts on Senator Duckworth as commencement speaker.
Thanks, Mary Grace. I'm here in Kogan Plaza to ask students their opinions on GW's recent announcement that Tammy Duckworth will be the commencement speaker for this year's ceremony.
Initially, I had no idea who she was, and then I saw reactions from my friends on Facebook. Someone was criticizing the fact that GW commencement is a platform for the Democratic Party's presidential nominees in 2020, which is interesting. But yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool because I'm from Illinois and she's also from Illinois, and so I just thought that was really interesting.
I was actually really excited when I saw that it was going to be Duckworth because I really like her. She's a fairly moderate member of the Congress, but she's still a solid Democrat. She's still a really interesting woman and a really powerful speaker. She's got a great story behind her, I think, in that she gave up so much. She was a GW graduate who then went on, lost both of her legs in a war, and is now trying to fix the system. I think she's a really interesting woman who's working hard to help us, so I was really excited to see it.
I think it's an interesting and exciting choice bringing in a new senator, a Democratic senator, in the middle of a Republican administration, and it really makes me excited to see who my commencement speaker will be.
I think she represents some important ideals, and I know her legacy is very impressive, obviously, what she's been through. So for a lot of people kind of leaving college, going to this global economy, there's I don't know, I think one thing is very important is perseverance. I think her story kind of tells that more than anybody's.
I mean, I think it's a good thing in terms of GW's international student population and also just the diversity we have here. I mean, we had Cory Booker last commencement, right? And so, I mean, now, we've got another person.
Tim Cook on there, too.
Yeah. No, but it's good to diversify, and I think it gives you, more worldly perspectives than just other leaders that we've had in the past.
At first, I was a little disappointed because I didn't really know who it was, but then after I researched her, she seems like a good choice. I'm very happy that she's not a Republican senator. But yeah, it'll be interesting to hear her, and I'm not going to judge her too quickly because I know a couple of years ago people thought Jose Andres wouldn't be a good speaker, but he ended up being one of the best. So I'm curious what she'll say.
Graduation's always an incredible experience, especially when it's on the National Mall. For GWeek, I'm Samantha Treeman.
Thank you, Samantha. The opportunity to celebrate university commencement on the National Mall is certainly an Only at GW moment, which is now just 2 months away. In addition to being commencement speaker, Tammy Duckworth, along with Lieutenant General Nadja West and Washington Post executive editor Marty Barron, will receive honorary doctorate degrees of public service at this year's commencement. West, a GW Medical School graduate from 1988, is the 44th Surgeon General and Commanding General of the U.S. Army Medical Command. Barron is a Pulitzer Prize winner and started working at the Washington Post in 2013. Promising a new era of America greatness, President Donald Trump delivered his first address to a joint session of Congress on February 28th. The president called for unity and strength as he discussed the rise of anti-Semitic hate crimes, healthcare reform, immigration policy, and a call for an increase in military spending. The speech came roughly 1 month after Trump's inauguration, a pivotal moment for the president as he has signed 15 executive orders since taking office. One of those executive orders was a revised immigration law he signed earlier this month. Here in studio now is GWeek reporter Rudy Venkatesan to tell us more. Rudy?
Thanks, Mary Grace. On Monday, March 6th, the Trump administration released a new executive order on immigration. The new order acted as a revision to the first immigration law that Trump opposed back in January. The order, commonly referred to as the Muslim ban, bars immigration from 6 predominantly Muslim countries, including Iran, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Syria, and Libya for 90 days. Iraq is no longer considered among the affected countries after the Iraqi government promised increased information sharing with the United States. Unlike the first immigration order, the new order will not go into effect immediately, but will be reinforced starting March 16th. The law does not impact lawful permanent residents or green card holders. Visas approved before March 16th will not be affected either. According to the State Department, all visas revoked because of the previous executive order have been restored. The original travel order placed an indefinite ban on all Syrian refugees entering the United States. According to this new order, all refugees, including those from Syria, will be suspended for 120 days. The Trump administration's attempt to implement the order the first time around was halted by a federal judge's temporary restraining order on the ban. Following that, a panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled to uphold the block of the immigration order. Multiple delays of the first ban led to the creation of this new travel order. Protests and other demonstrations broke out all over the world following the first travel ban. People rallied at airports across the U.S. to advocate for unrestricted immigration. Scuffles reportedly broke out between pro-immigration supporters and pro-Trump supporters. We will all certainly keep an eye out on the situation as it progresses. For GWeek, I'm Vruti Venkatesan. Back to you, Mary Grace.
Thank you, Vruti. The story behind the landmark 2015 Supreme Court case that made same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states was shared in a special panel discussion at GW's Jack Morton Auditorium last month. The plaintiff, Jim Obergefell, spoke with Debbie Senzipper, a professor at the School of Media and Public Affairs, about the case and the book, Love Wins, The Lovers and Lawyers Who Fought the Landmark Case for Marriage Equality. They were also joined by one of the lawyers, Douglas Howard-Dremier. The book is co-written by Obergefell and Senzipper. The panel was moderated by SMPA Professor Stephen Roberts. Following the panel discussion, all three speakers were available to sign copies of the book. When we come back, GWeek reporter Devon Morales will sit down with Professor Debbie Senzipper to discuss her new book, Love Wins, and the future of journalism. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome back to GWeek. I'm Devon Morales. Here with us now is SMPA Professor Debbie Senzipper. She is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and investigative reporter at The Washington Post. And last summer, she released her first book called Love Wins, The Lovers and the Lawyers Who Fought the Landmark Case for Marriage Equality. It captures the human stories behind the historic Supreme Court case, Obergefell v. Hodges, that legalized same-sex marriage in the United States. The book is co-written by Jim Obergefell, the named plaintiff in the case. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So the first question I want to ask you is, what compelled you to take a leave of absence from the Post to write this book?
You know, I think like most Americans, I was really moved and touched by the stories of these plaintiffs who were really ordinary people who stepped out of their private lives to do something extraordinary. You know, the plaintiffs in this case were not advocates. They were mothers and fathers and husbands and wives. And they fought this case because they wanted to protect the people they loved most in the world. And as a human being and as a mother and as a wife and as a journalist, I was really moved by their stories.
And it just so happens that you had a relationship with Jim Obergefell. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so Jim and I go back, way back. He was actually at my wedding 20-some years ago with his late husband, John. And we hadn't really been in touch at all. And then I read about this case, his case, moving toward the U.S. Supreme Court in my own newspaper, The Washington Post. It was on the front page, and I thought, gosh, I have to write that book. And so the very next day, I went into the newsroom and asked my editor if I could take a leave of absence to do the book.
Wow. All
Yeah.
right. And the book doesn't just focus on Jim and John's story. You included the personal stories of the other plaintiffs and the civil rights lawyers. So what was behind that decision?
Yeah, I mean, Jim's story was so moving and so compelling. If you don't know it, he fought to get an accurate death certificate for his dying husband in the state of Ohio, even though they had been legally married in Maryland. They lived in Ohio, which did not recognize same-sex marriage, which meant that when his husband John, who happened to be dying of ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, when he died, he would be listed as single and unmarried on his death certificate. They did not want to ever have that happen. They were in love and they wanted their marriage to be recognized. But there were many other plaintiffs, as he mentioned, in 3 other states that also were facing these same issues. Not only did they want to be married, but even when they had been married, their marriages were not recognized in the states that they were living in. And so there were 40-some plaintiffs involved in this case, and also some incredibly compelling, driven civil rights lawyers. And I wanted to be sure to talk about them as well.
And an interesting thing that you were able to accomplish is that you got 2 federal judges to go on the record with you. How did you convince them to do that?
Yeah, it's not easy to get sitting federal judges to go on the record, but fortunately these 2 judges had lifetime appointments, and they basically said, you know what, we're gonna talk to you. We're here on the bench, you know, for the remainder of as long as we want to be here, and we're going to tell you these stories. And it was really interesting to me as a journalist to hear the way they decided this case and how they brought their own personal experiences to this case. And so I was very, very happy to have their interviews.
Yeah. One thing I would like to note, your book was released just 2 days after the shooting in Orlando, and you had to go out and promote this book, which was completely different than what was happening when you came out. How was that to talk about this book right after that devastating event?
It's a great question. It was absolutely devastating. I mean, we were watching the events at Pulse nightclub as they were happening and reading the news stories out of Florida, and it was sickening. And here we have a book that's celebrating love at a time when there was such obvious hate in Orlando, and it was definitely a difficult thing to do. And I think the way that Jim and I dealt with it is we decided, you know what, this is a book about love. This is a book about faith. This is a book about people who just loved each other so much that they brought this case to the highest court in the land. And maybe there is no better time to talk about love than in the face of great hatred and tragedy.
Yeah, a truly inspiring moment. So now I would like to talk to you about the process for preparing a book compared to an investigative piece at the Post. How's your training method, and how do you get all your research done? How is it different?
You know, it is both very different and also very similar. What I've been doing as an investigative reporter at the Washington Post and at other papers for 25 years. Thank goodness I'm a journalist and I'm used to working on deadline, because I had six months to produce 80,000 words. So I was basically reporting and writing 1 chapter every week nonstop for 6 months. Some weeks not knowing what the next chapter was going to say. So learning how to work on deadline as a journalist was a great help. But this is not an investigative story. This is a love story. This book is a legal thriller. It's about families and people. And so while I used many of my skills as an investigative reporter, this is narrative nonfiction. It reads like a fiction book, and that was the goal.
And was that nice to have that change of pace?
You have no idea. I've been writing about government corruption and fraud and bad people doing bad things for 20-some years. And this was such a refreshing, nice change of pace. I was personally inspired by the people in this book.
Beautiful. And you are also inspiring young journalists also. So why did you decide to become a professor?
Yeah, well, I mean, the opportunity came up here at SMPA. It's an incredible faculty here. I'm so moved by the students at GW. I find that the students here are so socially aware and so interested in the world around them. And I really thought it was time for me to pass on what I've learned over 25 years to the next generation of journalists. And it's a decision I'm glad I make every single time I step into the classroom at GW.
And just to build off of that, as you know, we're currently in this weird era of fake news, alternative facts, and just the proliferation of media. And The media is ranked one of the really low with trustworthiness with the public. So what advice have you been giving your journalism students to continue this pursuit in this career facing all this backlash?
Yeah, another great question. Yes, there's backlash, unprecedented backlash, obviously, against the media right now. There is no better time to be a journalist than right now. There is no better profession to pursue. The Washington Post is ramping up its investigative staff. CNN is, Politico is. I mean, this is a great time to hold the powerful to account. It's what we do no matter who's in office or who's in the White House. But this is a particularly good time to step up and do this kind of work.
Do you think that eventually we'll be able to gain the public's trust back?
I don't necessarily think we've lost the public's trust, all of the public's trust. I think there's a faction of the public that may never trust the media. But I think by and large what we do matters, and I think that what we do is absolutely vital to democracy.
All right, 2 more questions for you. Do you have any other special projects in the works? I hear there's a movie possibly also?
There is a movie, and so 20th Century Fox optioned the book actually before I wrote the book.
Wow, I heard it was like a few minutes after the decision came out, right, that they bought up the rights?
It was within days.
Wow.
And the screenplay is written. The screenwriter is Chris Weitz, who just wrote the Rogue One movie.
Oh, wow.
So we got a very cool screenwriter on the project.
Yeah.
And the last I heard, they're about to bring on a director, so it's a very exciting project.
Wow.
I'm also working on my second book.
Oh, exciting.
With the help of some very talented GW students who are working as researchers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last question for you. What piece of reporting are you most proud of?
Well, I'm obviously very proud of the book, but my stories over time as an investigative reporter have launched congressional investigations. People have been arrested, put in jail for fraud, for abusing their role as politicians and powerful people, for hurting the poor and vulnerable. So I'm always proud of the results that my investigative stories have produced, particularly for people that don't have a voice, vulnerable, disenfranchised communities. That's really the work that I've always been most proud of.
That's beautiful work that you've been doing. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Professor.
Yes.
All right. So we are going to be right back after the break, and Mary Grace will have more with headlines. Stay with us.
Nearly 16 million people visit Washington, D.C. every year. Some come to witness, some to be heard. We come to make an impact, to learn from leaders, and to lead others. To create and create change. We are the George Washington University. We come to make history.
Welcome back. It's been over a month since the Women's March on Washington, and if you're wondering what's next, look no further. GWeek reporter Hallie Brown has the story on the newest protest, A Day Without a Woman.
Fired up! Ready to go! You may know that March is Women's History Month, but what you probably didn't know is that March 8th was a day without women. The protest followed the highly successful Women's March on Washington, and while the first rally brought together millions of women worldwide, its follow-up event invited none.
The Women's March on Washington planned a bunch of set of events that we could do afterwards to keep up the activism that they really showed on January 21st. A Day Without Women is on March 28th, International Women's Day, and you're supposed to follow 3 directives. Wear red, buy local, or don't buy at all, and then don't help out any paid or unpaid work.
From the United States to Sweden, protests took place around the world on March 8th. However, A Day Without Women and Women's March organizers were arrested for protesting while in New York City, while women around the world were afraid of participating for fear of losing their jobs.
I know that's often the most contentious part of their platform, but it's really just showing that if women don't do something, the economy also does not do anything. We are 50% of the United States, and if we stand together and say that we don't want something to happen, things will not be done without us.
For GWeek, this is Hallie Brown.
Thank you, Hallie. Following the wonky weather DC has been having, the cherry blossom peak bloom date has been changed multiple times. Here's Matthew Kerwin with the story.
The 2017 Cherry Blossom Watch is underway, and its projected bloom this year is supposed to be between March 12th and March 17th. The weather has been fluctuating between hot and cold weeks all month long, making it hard to determine the peak bloom. Currently, we just have these meek-looking buds on the branches, but soon we will have a beautiful bloom all around the tidal basin and the Jefferson Memorial. In 1912, the Emperor of Japan gave the city of Washington, D.C. 3,000 cherry blossom trees as a sign of friendship with the United States. Today, there are only 100 of the original trees still alive. The city of Washington, D.C. and the National Park Service are hoping for at least 1.5 million people to attend this year's Cherry Blossom Festival. For GWeek, this is Matt Kerwin.
Thanks, Matt. When it comes to quality of life, you're living in the right city. A new report ranks D.C. as the 4th best place to live in the country. The annual study considers job opportunities, affordability, and more for 100 cities. The district was noted for its strong international job market, extensive public transit system, and abundance of parks. D.C. moved up 4 ranks since last year, following Austin, Denver, and San Jose. St. Patrick's Day is a time filled with leprechauns, chocolate coins, and 3-leaf shamrocks. The day is in remembrance of the patron saint of Ireland, who died in 461. Washington, D.C. will be hosting its 46th annual St. Patrick's Day Festival on March 12th at noon. The parade will be marching down Constitution Avenue and will be filled with floats, music, and fun for the whole family. RFK Stadium will be hosting its classic Shamrock Fest to ring in the holiday with tons of games, live music, and events. Additionally, pubs, restaurants, and lounges all around the city will be dressing in green and celebrating the feast day with grub, fun-filled events, and classic Irish music all around. We will be back after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Student Association Senate passed a resolution instating a freshman forgiveness policy. Any student who receives a D+ or below in one course during their first academic year is eligible to retake the course. Once retaken, the new grade will replace the previous failure on their transcript and GPA. The new policy is not just for freshmen. All students are grandfathered in and able to retake a failed course from freshman year. The announcement of the resolution came days before GW students declared their candidacies for the Student Association on Facebook. The Joint Election Committee has told candidates they can officially start distributing campaign materials on March 21st. Voting will take place on March 29th and 30th on GW OrgSync. Earlier this month, GW updated their GW PAL app. PAL stands for Personal Alarm Locator, which every GW student can get through the App Store or Android. The new update allows for dispatchers to live track your location throughout campus when you activate the application. From there, the app gives you options on what type of emergency service is needed. The live tracking module allows police to know the current location of the person every few seconds, as opposed to only knowing one location on the previous version. If the person goes off campus, the app automatically contacts 911 instead of GWPD. Users will also get all GW alerts, have access to 4Ride and taxi services within the app. Coffee, crepes, croissants, and more. Foggy Bottom's new vendor, Ponchu, has it all. Our new GWeek reporter, Julia Scalapio, has the story.
At the end of February, Ponchu Cafe and Crepes opened its doors between Funger and Duquesne Hall, bringing with it over 50 different types of sweet and savory crepes, as well as an extensive coffee menu. This is the 3rd location for Ponchu Cafe and Crepes. They have another location in Washington, D.C. on 14th Street and another one located in New York City. We asked customers for their opinions on the crepes.
I thought it was really good. We came here, as my first time was yesterday, so I came back again for another one, but I got a Nutella and strawberry one and it was really good, so we came back.
I mean, I was just in class and I came down right before it started, so it's kind of convenient to come down and be able to just get crepes when you need them.
The taste is good, the crepes are good, rich, and I actually prefer the boys.
Unlike its predecessor, GW Java, Honshu Cafe and Crepes is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And best of all, they do take GWorld. You can take these crepes to go or eat them in-house. From GWeek, this is Julia Scalapio.
Did the 2016 election spark your interest in campaign art? Well, there's only 1 month left to check out an exhibit dedicated to the artwork of historical campaigns. Here is Samantha Tryman with more.
GW's Textile Museum is currently featuring a new exhibit called Your Next President, the campaign act of Mark and Rosalind Shankman. The collection will be featured through April 9th of this year. Pieces from the Albert H. Small Washingtoniana collection are also featured in the exhibit. Highlights include campaign banners, buttons, and bandanas from the 19th century presidential campaigns of some of the most memorable presidents.
Singer and songwriter Brett Young brought his country flair to metropolitan D.C. on March 8th. The star sang at GW's Lisner Auditorium. The show was co-presented with the D.C. radio station WPGC. On April 23rd, singer Dram, best known for his party songs like Broccoli, will team up with WPGC again at Lisner. Tickets for Dram are on sale now. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. Until next time, make sure to check out GWTV on our website at www.gw-tv.com. Thanks for tuning in, GW. We'll be seeing you around campus.